Hey guys, joining me today for this Zoom lesson is my sister over here, as you guys can see her in the screen. Her name is Dee, and she's the reason that I started doing lashing. And if any of you guys know the story, I've told it many times on my vlogs, on my channel. The reason that I started lashing is because my sister harassed me in a car late at night for some free lashes after she sat at somebody's house for 6 hours on a table. And didn't want to do it originally, but I ended up doing it. And now here we are 7 years later, 6-figure business, teaching, classes, store, full stack clientele, and now doing online teaching. So this is the reason that I do what I do. And today I am very honored because she has reached out and asked me if I would help her to learn how to do the skill. So she's going to be joining in on our lash class today. All right.
Okay.
Like, what?
You told me not to look at you, so I was like staring at my neighbor outside, and I was like, "Oh."
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna start with the manual, and like you said, you kind of skimmed it. Let's be honest. Like we all skim the manual. I know some people out there, they do read the manual, but a lot of my students come in and they're like, "Yeah,
I just skimmed it, and I looked at the pictures, and I was like, "Ooh," and then I closed it.
Pictures. Got it. That's okay. I do the same thing. I also skim. So my sister is what are you again? Your technical job?
I'm a surgical technologist.
Okay. She's a surgical technologist. That basically, from what I understand that she does is she works in the surgery room and she helps with the surgeries and all those kinds of things. She actually does this for an optometrist, right? Is it optometrist?
No. Ophthalmologist.
Ophthalmologist, sorry. So she works with the eyeball while I work with the eyelashes. So it might be interesting, having somebody like that here for class because, we do work with eyeballs. So if she has anything that she can give us, any information that might be kind of helpful. I'm giving you no information. I'm not telling you nothing. Okay, so for some of these things, I'm going to kind of skim quickly because you don't need to know the anatomy of the eye. I'm sure you know the anatomy of the eye probably better than I know the anatomy of the eye. But these are just what I put in the book here was for the relevant information for the eyeball. These are things that we work with as an eyelash technician, things that you should be aware of in your career. So if you guys want to take a look at that, you have the cornea, the retina, optic nerve, iris, pupil, and the lens. Those are like the top 5 or 6, words, phrases that we need to know as eyelash technicians. Structure of eyelashes. This is where it kind of gets a little bit more technical into like what we do as eyelash technicians. So that is why I started the chapter when I wrote this book. Did you know I wrote this book, Dee? This is my book. I wrote this book. I didn't get this book from somewhere else.
Oh, I know you wrote that book. I know you wrote that book.
And I sell this book too on my Etsy. So for any of you guys watching that would like to buy this book or teach it or learn it, I have it on my Etsy shop. You guys can visit that on my Instagram or my TikTok. You see the link there. Now I start my book really foundational and I move through the chapters into, eyelash extensions and all that kind of stuff. But it's really important that we know the structure of the eyelashes. It's important that we know how the eyes work, the eyes function, diseases, disorders. So that's why I start small and I build into basically eyelash extensions.
I do like the book though, because you wrote it in such a way that it makes me want to read the book. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not even kidding you. Because you wrote it in such easy little chunks that it doesn't overwhelm you. So you just look at it, it's like, oh, this is what I'm learning about. And then it's like, oh, I don't know how you did it, but you did it in such a way that it is not stressful. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I wanted to make it in chunks. And actually originally, my original book, I had different text. And then I was like, wait, that looks just too messy. I was like, wait, so we got to change the text into one font, one, standard font style, and make it a little bit easier.
You kind of did it how you text somebody. Is it that weird to say? Because you did it in such a way that it was short text Or like, I can read this because it's like a couple of sentences. Like
A
I
couple
don't
sentences, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing is that-
at a time. It's not like giant.
right. And the thing is that I've been teaching for a while now. And so I know how the brain works. I know how
Yeah, it works well. It works well. Yeah.
we, you know, you can't pay attention. And let's be honest, by the time that I get halfway through this book, your brain's gonna be like, what
Yeah,
am
you have no idea. You're
I-"
just zoned out. Like you just
Yeah.
like any
And
other
that
lecture, like
exactly. And that's why I kind of try, that's why when I was reading other manuals and stuff out there, it was that there was a lot of fluff. And I was like, dude, we don't need to know like all of this fluff and lots of medical terms. And I'm like, okay, we got to cut some of this stuff. The medical terms are great to know, but like for my students, you know, if they want to learn all this kind of stuff, they should be learning that in their esthetician classes, their cosmetology classes. They're going to learn all that kind of stuff in school. So what I want to do is just really focus into like eyelashes. And that's why I wrote the book.
You're real about it. You didn't try to get fancy and start using all these weird words. You just want to be like, this is what it is, and it works.
Totally. Okay, so let's start with the structure of the eyelashes. So this, when you know the structure of the eyelashes. So human lower lid contains 75 to 80 lashes dispersed in 3 to 4 rows, whereas the upper lids has 90 to 160 lashes scattered on 5 to 6 rows. Now you're a surgical technologist. You deal with eyes every day. You know when you have the patient looking up, you're looking at her eye and you're seeing all the rows of lashes. And most of the time, people don't just have one singular row of eyelashes. It just doesn't work like that. And something that's good with you is that you've done eyelash extensions in the past. Like I remember when I first started, I was like, I had to go to school. I had to learn. So now you're going to have to do it on me. I'm going to teach you here. And I remember like 7 years ago, and you were like crying.
I need these. I'm like, okay, we'd be there for hours.
Be like, are you done yet? And you'd be like, I got 6. How you got 6 in 4 hours?
And then I would glue your eye together.
And then you would glue my eye together. Yep. And one eye would look like kind of good. And then the other eye would just be like,
always.
And I would be like, what happened over here? Like, and they're all
I
stuck
was
together.
better at one eye.
So this is why when you texted me that you wanted to learn, like really learn it this time, I was like, absolutely. This would be amazing for you to actually learn it, you know. Okay, so we'll take a picture. We'll take a look at the graph here. We can see that the shaft, the glans, root, dermal papilla, you know, the follicle and the blood vessels. This is how the hair shaft works under the epidermis. This is how everything looks. Simple graph. Okay, so the anatomy of the lash and hair has some similar characteristics. Both have a hair shaft, which is the visible part that we see, that extends outside the skin, a root that is under the skin, and a bulb, which is the enlarged terminal portion. The inferior portion of the bulb is in a direct contact with the dermal papilla, which brings key, okay, I'm not even going to try to say that word, interactions in follicle cycling. Probably got that from like some science center or whatever.
Mesenchymal epithelial.
What? Well, wait, you know what? While I'm doing this, I have the manual here, and I told myself while I was doing this that I was gonna highlight some stuff if I saw like little typos and stuff in the book so that I could go back and fix like typos. And I see there that there's not a period, which is gonna bother me. So, and I proofread this like 16 times, but even you proofread it, you can't find all the mistakes.
Do your other ones have periods?
No, this is the one that
I kind of like it without a period.
It's driving me crazy who doesn't have a period.
Okay.
Let me just make a note on it on my paper here because I printed the book. So let me make a note here so that I can go back and fix that.
How much you sell this for?
I sell this book for $30 a pop.
Holy shit.
And I've
Did
already
you at least put it for like $29.99? So like in your head, it's like, oh, you know, or did you put it like flat 30?
Flat 30. I just said flat 30. And there's cheaper ones on there, but I saw it for I think this morning I sold 2 copies of it this morning.
I feel like it should be $27.99.
Oh,
in my head, like that's like, oh, I would buy that without even thinking.
Maybe I'll lower it. The thing is
that's
that
what I think. Yeah,
you know, Etsy takes a portion of my earnings, so
it would either be $27.99 or $32.99. Like in my head, like those are numbers that I would be like, I wouldn't even think twice about buying it. You know what I mean?
And we'll talk later on the book about pricing because you're gonna have to price your work if you're really gonna seriously do this. You're gonna have to price. So we'll talk later about why the 0.99 doesn't really work in psychology, but.
Oh, see, I also like $11.99 too.
$11.99.
I don't know
Price
why.
my sets at $59.99.
Well, for like electronic, like online things, like that makes me buy stuff. Like, I don't know.
I mean, there is a psychology to it, but I found that like recently a lot of people are more annoyed. Like if you have the 0.99 or like if you do like
Ah,
59.96, they like it drives people crazy. So they like to just
what if
round
you
it and
make
just
it
put it
like
full.
11:56? Like just something random as hell. Like
Okay, so moving on to the structure of the eyelashes. So the lash itself is made up of three structures that fit into one another. And the innermost structure is the medulla, which consists of loose cells, a thicker cortex around the medulla to ensure its strength and stability. The pigmentation of either the lash or the hair is the result of melanin contained in the cortex. Finally, the cuticle, composed of several cells, forms the outermost portion, offering protection to the internal structure by its impermeability. There we go. Actually, I drew this thing because I couldn't find one
tell. I
that I
could
liked.
tell.
Because it was too, like all the ones I was looking at, they were like too complex. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, there's too much stuff on here. So I literally just drew this and I wanted you to just see literally from a cellular level. And I think later in the chapter, I may or might not go over this, but retention, right? So we talk about retention and lash extensions. That's how long your set's going to last you. And that's like your most important selling point as a lash artist, is your retention, because people will literally not go back to you if you are not having good retention. And you get lash extensions all the time, right? So you know exactly what I'm talking about with the retention thing. Like at a cellular level, and I teach this in my class, and not a lot of people teach this, but I've been around long enough to know, and I'm from a hair background too. I used to do hair for a while. So we used to talk about all the time. So on a cellular level, there's a cuticle. Okay. Okay, this is the picture I always use. Okay, so you see this picture, right, of the cuticle under the microscope. So we can see here in letter B and letter C. So I'm just comparing these two pictures. Now, if we look at this, this is a lot what eyelash extensions look like under a microscope too, because it's a hair. So it has a cuticle the same as a hair on our head. So if you look at this one, which is smooth, and you see that the cortex, it lays flat like roof tiles, this person is actually going to have worse retention microscopically than this person here that has a more porous cuticle, because her hair is more porous, which means that the cuticles raise up like scaly, bumpy little things. What's happening in it in image C is that when you place the glue, the adhesive onto a lash like this, it's going to almost interlock in all of those little notches and scales, gonna almost interlock in there and like really stick. But the person here that has non-porous hair, these are usually your brunettes. You're going to see this in a lot of brunette people, black hair people. For whatever reason, brunette people like ourselves, we tend to have shinier, thicker, smoother hair than blondes. Like a lot of my blondes have more porous hair. They bleach their blonde highlights and things like that. So blondes will have typically better retention than brunettes. So for my brunettes up here, what happens is you put the adhesive onto a cuticle like this, it's going to stick on there and it might kind of slide off more quickly than if it's interlocked in a highly porous cuticle. So that's something that I teach in class, because sometimes you have a client that comes in and you're like, she's doing everything aftercare, you're doing everything during the service, and you still can't figure out why this client in particular is doing everything right, you're doing everything right, and she still can't have a good retention, as somebody else. So it actually could be something on the molecular level, like, under the microscope.
Well, I think it has to do with like ethnicity, because like even mom, like she has like the blonde hair and it's like it's super fine. It's like much more fine and much thinner than like our hair. I wonder, sounds kind of like unethical a little bit, but you could like take their eyelashes and like scrape them to like add texture, and then you could put them on for retention. You think that would work?
Like on someone that's blonde, or just somebody that's having bad retention?
Yeah, bad retention, or just like if like predetermines that, like, oh, blonde hair is harder for retention, and you could just kind of
Actually, blonde hair tends to be easier since they tend to be more porous. But if you have someone that comes into your chair that you're looking at her face, right, and you could tell that this person's a more oily person. If you see that this person's a more oily person just by sitting in her chair, assume that this person has like less porous eyelashes, and that her lashes are probably going to be more oilier just because her face is. It's going to be, you know, she might be someone that might suffer with the retention. That is
Yeah.
when you're going to want to throw on a primer, or even they have now, I can't think of the name. I'll put it up here on the screen once I think of it, like after when I'm editing this. But basically what it does is it goes in there and it basically like roughs, it opens up the cuticle so that it becomes more porous. And I can't think of the name because I haven't taught this in a while. But there is something that they put on. It's like a primer or a whatever that thing is, and it opens the pore. We kind of use it in hair too. Like when we have clients that we're trying to lift with the bleach, we can use this product as well to kind of open their cuticle up or even close their cuticle in some senses, depending on the product. But it does exist in lash extensions. There's things for that now, especially now. Back 7 years ago, there wasn't anything. And so people were sitting there scratching their heads going, oh no. And we were barely using primer 7 years ago. So primer just became like a new thing a few years ago. But I would definitely use primer. It's going to help to swipe off all of those oils, and it will help you with your retention on these people that are having poor retention. Okay, on to the lash growth cycle. Ooh, what? Ooh. Are you there?
Yeah. Am I still here?
Okay. All right. 6 pages in. I know. But when I do this, and when I do this with like one-on-one person, I'm talking like literally the speed of light. Like I am talking like the speed of light, you know. I'm like,
oh, I know.
Like, you know,
because when you get kind of like that, you talk like Mickey Mouse, and you're like,
wow. I was talking like the speed of light. Or, people are looking at me like, oh shoot,
just trying to get through it.
We got too much stuff to do. Okay, so lashes have life cycles consisting of 3 phases. That's the same for the hair on your head. So the first phase we're going to look at is the growth phase. That's the anagen cycle. That's the baby hairs, all the little baby hairs. The degradation phase, which is the catagen phase. Those are the teenage hairs. And the resting phase, which is telogen, which are the adult hairs. Okay, this is kind of important because there are going to be clients that you're going to work with where you're going to look, they're going to close their eyes and you're going to go, dang, this person got a lot of baby hairs. Like, ooh, how am I going to do this? You know, like this is going to be difficult because, you know, your ideal client is going to be someone that has a lot of teenage hairs and a lot of adult hairs. Teenage hairs preferably, because their hair can be strong. It's going to be in their cycle for a while, you know, at least a few weeks. So that's what we're kind of aiming for. So following the telogen phase, the lash will fall out and the life cycle begins again with a new lash in anagen phase. So this is important. It's common to lose up to 7 lashes every day, but as they are consistently in renewal cycle, it's nothing to worry about. Generally, you don't even notice. There are, however, seasons throughout the year, specifically spring and autumn, where lashes will shed more noticeably. Now, this is going to be like, you're going to go on Facebook. You'll probably, I'll add you to the Facebook groups where we talk about lashing and all this kind of stuff. This is going to be one of those things, and I put it in my book because I wanted my students to know at least what it was that people were referencing on Facebook, because people will argue all day long about whether or not this actually exists. I think it does exist because I've experienced it in the last 7 years, but some people don't, and that's because they live in maybe places like California or Florida that it doesn't really get seasonal. But for me, in the spring and the autumn, just as mammals will kind of shed their hair and get summer hair, or shed their hair and get winter hair or whatever, I think that happens as us to mammals. So sometimes during these times of years, you'll notice that your clients will come in the spring and the autumn, and you'll be like, dang, their retention is not good. Like I'm having to do bigger fills, or their hair isn't growing back as much. Am I ruining their lashes? You know, you'll have these kinds of thoughts, but usually it only happens a couple times a year, and it's a few weeks out of those, you know, spring and autumn. So if you see that on Facebook groups and you're like, what are they talking about? Spring shed, autumn shed. Now you know what they're referencing, because it's just a time of year that they think that maybe they lose more. This is because body hair is changing due to change in temperatures. So shedding natural lashes. So a natural lash with an extension applied will shed and then regrow, allowing for a new extension to be applied. There are times when the shedding cycle can be quicker, and other times when the cycle can slow down. The cycle usually slows down as we age, and it may speed up in different parts of the year. Eyelashes consistently replenish themselves on a cycle. And then I wrote here the lash shedding. So you can how do you say this? You can presume. No, you can assume. You can I see
Um,
your hair. Just looks like a hobo. I was like, wait, I gotta bring my hair at least. I just got the hair all over. Look at my sister. Okay, so approximately you will lose 21 lashes in a week, 42 lashes in 2 weeks, 63 lashes in 3 weeks. So and I put like a nice little graph here, and you can see here anagen, those are baby hairs, right? And you see telogen up here, which is the longest ones, and then catagen, which are like these kind of teenage hairs. You really want to try your best to lash really well these catagen hairs, because these are the teenage hairs. These are the hairs that are going to be in her face for the next few weeks. Telogen here, totally acceptable to lash these, but I'm telling you right now, even you can see here at the bottom, sometimes you can even see like a little white bulb here. And it's funny, you'll see it when you get really good at eyelash extensions and you start getting like that microscopic, like Superman vision. You'll see a tiny bulb on the bottom of that lash. And sometimes what I do with my tweezer is I'll grab the lash and I'll just gently pull it, and like a lot of times it will come out. Because I can't tell you how many times I've made a beautiful fan, put it together,
put it on there and it fell out.
and immediately after putting it on that thing, it just goes and it falls out. And I'm like, what the heck? So I've learned sometimes I should go in there and I should kind of just tug it a little bit, you know, to see if it's gonna fall out before I waste my time making this beautiful fan and putting it all together and putting it on there.
Do you pre-make your fans, or do you make them during the session?
So what I'm going to tell you to do in the beginning is I want you to pro make your fans. Okay. So, and as we go later in the chapter, you'll understand why I said pro, but basically pro means professional made, and pre-made means pre-manufactured. So pre means pre-manufactured in a factory. Pro made means professionally made by you, the human. So I will tell you to and I tell all my students to pro make. I have all of my students make 100 pro made fans between the time that they leave my class and the time that they come back for their model, because by 1 to 100, at the 100th fan, you're going to see a huge improvement through those last 99 fans. So that's something that we're going to work on tomorrow or whenever we do the practical stuff. So I'll teach you how to pro make your fans. I want you to sit at home and start pro making your fans, putting them in boxes so that you can get better, because ultimately the highest goal for you as a lash technician is to be able to hand make your fans. So we have pre-made on the bottom, pro made, and then we have handmade at the top, which is like the highest skill that you could be as a lash artist. So at some point you want to be in that high category of handmade artist. And when it says handmade, it means that you are making your fans at the time of the appointment as you go along your appointment. You're not sitting at home, you know, making them the day before, the morning before, pro making them.
You want to be like super fast so you can do it during the session. So there is
exactly. And there's benefits of hand making over pro making. And we'll go over later in the chapter what the benefits are between the two of them. Okay, so this is important. The amount of natural lashes along the upper lash line is going to vary from person to person, and there could be as few as 90 lashes per eye to around 160 to 200 per eye, and that would be considered thick and full. Now, every client that you're going to come in, they're going to have different kinds of eyelashes. And so you might have somebody that comes in and they have small eyes. Personally, I like people that have small eyes because they have less eyelashes and they have less surface area, so they're quicker to do. That's because I'm lazy now. I'll be honest. So if you have someone that has small eyes, yes, awesome. Also